Okay, so now we're recording. I forgot to record the first part, so that's lost to time. Time to find and time to lose. Is that one of the couplets? Yeah. Okay, so let's review what we did last time. And we're not going to reread all the psukim. But so what was the Mahari Kara's main approach to the aces? Time for this and time for that.
Silence seems happy now, bring you to sadness again.
Yeah, right. So what seems to be happy now or sad now is not indicative of the end. All right, good. So that was his approach to all of that. Then what was his approach to? Oh, and therefore, ma yisron ha'oseh bashar hu amel. What did he say for that? That was pasuk tes. Let me that one actually. I forgot what he said where. So he says there. Oh, so yeah. You want to say?
You can't be excessively happy or excessively sad.
Right. So you can't be excessively happy or excessively sad because you don't know what the end is going to be. Okay. Then he said, God made everything yafeh be'ito. God made everything beautiful in its time.
It looks beautiful.
Right, but he actually didn't take it as beautiful, right? In practice, like I don't know if he was translating it differently, but he how did he say the yafeh be'ito on Yud Aleph?
Yafeh be'ito.
Where are you reading? Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. So I think he's. How do you say he's translating Yafeh? Good. But then he says b'shas simcha b'shas evla.
Proper.
Yeah, I think proper or right. Like he's saying that he made it so that you view everything that's happening now as like that's what actually is, or that is what is actually appropriate, or that's what's actually like real. And then he says he placed eternity in their hearts, which I didn't like his interpretation of that, but we had an interpretation based on his general approach.
Yeah, so he placed the feeling of indefiniteness.
Yeah, indefiniteness or timelessness, right? God placed timelessness in our hearts, meaning that instead of viewing it that what we have now is the present, but then there is a future, we view what we have now as like timeless, Okay. And then he says, which was a good shot, meaning that not he did it in order that man not see the end from the beginning, but that is what it means that he placed the olam in their hearts. He placed it in their hearts in that man cannot see the end from the beginning, that man cannot see the ultimate outcome. Okay, so that was a good shot. Okay, this we did not explain though. Okay, yadati ki ein tov bam ki im lismoch v'lasos tov b'chayav. So there we noted that there is something old and something new. The something old was from the previous parak of I knew that there's nothing better to do than to rejoice. And similarly in 13 he says v'gam kol adam sh'yochav v'shasa mataz lukim hi. Anyone who eats and drinks, that's a gift of God. But then the new element was la'asos tov, was doing good. Okay, so let's explain each of those. We didn't comment on that last time.
Wait, so what was it?
First one was eating and drinking and rejoicing. So that's like a sameach b'chalko idea. That one I think does make like that one's the easy one. How's that flow from what he's been setting up so far?
When you're thinking about how it's going, like when you're thinking about the future, you're not going to be able to assess how it's actually going to turn out. But you can assess how something is now.
Right.
So you can do what's like going to be good for you in the present.
Are you explaining the first part or the second part? The lismoach or the lazos tov?
Lismoach.
Oh, okay. I thought you just gave a good explanation for lazos tov.
Okay, fine. No, I thought by first I meant second. I didn't know Roche.
Let me be mafarish on what you meant with the lazos tov thing. Okay, in other words, let's say for example, you don't know whether let's say the lottery that you won just now is going to be good ultimately, or you don't know if like the job loss that you had now is going to be bad ultimately. So given the fact that you don't know those things, what is the most rational thing to do? It's to take activities that you know are good and to do them. So let's say for example, learning, right? So like you don't know in terms of stuff that befalls you whether it's going to be good or not, but you do know that learning and increasing your chachma is something that by its very nature is good. Like it is, like it doesn't mean it's going to lead to good in every case, but like the thing itself is a good activity, you know. And like again, I'm trying to differentiate between the feeling that I can predict the outcomes of this thing. Like let's say for example you decide to learn one day instead of like going on a trip, so yeah, it might be that because you learn you miss out on some like good that could come from the trip. That's not the kind of thing that I mean by good, but what I mean is like that the activity of learning is good. That the activity of tzedakah is good. That doing mitzvos is good. So the best thing you could do, given the fact that you don't know the outcomes, is to build your life around activities that you know are good, and whether those activities eventuate in good, you just have no idea. If that makes sense.
Well, let's say like going on a trip, like most likely it's going to turn out good for you.
Really?
It's a good thing for you. Well, like if you know that, like I don't know, going on this hike to this place, like it'll be fun, it'll be good. Like,
is good the same as pleasant?
oh, I don't know.
Yeah, because I meant good.
What do you mean by good?
That which is in line with your nature as a Tzelem Elohim.
Right.
That which brings you to true success.
Right.
Mitzvos, midos, and deos. Meaning like going on a trip may or may not be pleasant, but whether or not it leads you to true good, who's to say? And that again, this gets back to what we did this morning in Mishlei and what we did the day before in the Rambam, of like Rambam says you should ask God that whatever happens to you, good and bad, that it should be for true success. Right. Those are not necessarily correlating, and then therefore like the activities that you do that are part of the Torah regimen, let's say, or like things that are part of what it means to be human, are by their nature good insofar as they bring you towards true success of like living the way that you were designed to live. Whether they eventuate in things that make you that give you pleasure or pain, you don't really know.
Right.
I'll give you another mushal of that, or not another mushal. This is actually how I arrived at I cheated, is I plagiarized an idea for myself. That the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, based on the Chazal, about how like you should view yourself the entire year as though you're Chetzio Zaka and Chetzio Chayev, and if you do one mitzvah, it can incline you and the entire world to the Tzad Zechus and save it, or if you do one Avera, it could incline yourself and the whole world to Chova and destroy it. And then at the very next moment, every moment you have to view yourself like that. So even after you do the mitzvah, you got to reset the scales, and you reset the scales. So it always bothered me, it really seems like on the bad side, OCD thinking. And when I say OCD, I mean in the clinical sense, that people who have OCD, one of the symptoms is any little thing I do could get me infected and I'll be in the hospital and I'll die. Or on the good side, it feels totally unrealistic. I do this thing and just it makes me saved and then I save the world. It just sounds unrealistic, So in what world does that make sense? And the only answer I have found so far, unless you're going to go to metaphysics and be in God's cheshbon and tilt the scales, which I don't know what that means, is that if you look at things that are by their nature good, like mitzvos and learning, so there is a realistic outcome that when you perfect yourself in a certain way, it can have a very high return of investment, in the sense that it can you can I'm sure you've all had this experience. You go to a shiur, let's say you're on the fence about whether to go to shiur or not, and you go to the shiur and you hear one idea, and that one idea lodges in your mind, and then sometime later on in your life, you use it and it benefits you, and it changes the trajectory of your life, hopefully you've had shiurim like that. If not, then you're going to the wrong shiurim, but and when you look back at that and you say, well, was that random or was it stemming from the nature of the thing? It's clear it stemmed from the nature of the thing.
What do you mean by that?
What?
What do you mean by stemming from the nature?
Meaning, if you happen to decide to buy a lottery ticket and then you win the lottery and you get a lot of money, that's like chance, but the nature of what learning does is it changes the way you view the world. And when you view the world differently, you make different decisions. And if you view the world more in line with reality, you make decisions that are more in line with reality and get more results, So it's like the nature of the activity is such that like, this is what is expected to happen when you do the activity, in the same way that like, if you, this is Lahavdil, but like when you get a job and you make money, it's not like, oh, I happen to make money. Like, no, that's what a job is. So when you're learning or when you're doing mitzvos, you are actively like perfecting yourself, thereby making it more likely that you will enjoy increased perfection in the future. So with the scales mashal, it really is like that, where you can do one mitzvah, and because of the benefit that you got from the mitzvah, or because of the benefit that the mitzvah did for someone else, then like it is, it changes you or changes the world, like, and that's like, it stemmed from the thing. It's not a fluke. The only fluke part, I don't even want to use the word fluke, is like, you don't know which of the things are going to actually have that effect. But like, it's reasonable that it should have this effect. And same thing with Avera, like the moment you step out of reality and embrace a fantasy view of the world, that could result in nothing, or could result in total disaster. Like you don't really know once you deviate from reality, like how that's going to happen, or if you have any bad midah, if you feed a bad midah, let's say like you feed the midah of competitiveness, or like greed or ego or anger. So it could lead, the fact that you strengthen that bad midah could result in an outburst that makes a friend upset, or it could result in an outburst that has real world devastating consequences. Like I saw, was this from Rabbi Pilachowski? I think so, that he posted a thing about, what was it? This was his theory. Okay. I don't know the facts, that Trump insulted John McCain. Okay. Repeatedly. And as a consequence of that, when it came time to vote, John McCain was the vote that resulted in not repealing Obamacare. And because of that, if Trump had succeeded in repealing Obamacare, then he would have had a lot more votes this time around, and he might have won the election. Now that stemmed from a midah, whatever midah or cluster of midos, bouquet of midos that you want to say, like led to him like mocking John McCain. It stemmed from that. And like if someone not in that high of a position as Trump did that, like a playground bully, it might not have had a big effect. Or it might have led that kid to develop like inferiority complex and eating disorder and then commit suicide. Like that's the thing, is like, you don't know. But because you're doing an action that is feeding a bad midah, then if there is a bad result, that came from like, it came directly intrinsically from the thing. You just don't know which of them are going to have that devastating effect, So that's the idea that I got. And I'm saying the same thing here, that therefore, what's the rational thing to do, since you don't know the outcomes of anything, is build your life around a siyasa tov, doing things that you know that by their nature are good. And that's the best shot you have. What's the other option? Let's take the extreme other option. Do random things or do bad things. Are you telling me that's really going to increase your odds of good things happening just because you don't know what's going to happen? No. So that's the lasos tov. Now that's what I heard in your words, Isaac.
That was definitely what
If that's what you were saying, or whether it's not what you're saying, what about lismoach and le'echol v'shaso? How does that stem from like this attitude here? See, I think that's the easy one. Maybe I'm just really hedonistic.
Yeah, well, maybe, I guess there is like, yes, there is like the objective good, I guess, like for your soul, or like,
Yeah.
in terms of like success.
Yeah.
But then there's also like things that will be pleasant.
Yeah.
Which are like just pleasures and stuff.
So you should enjoy those. Yeah, right. I mean, like that's the thing, is like, and that was the argument he made at the end of the second paragraph, is like, if God gave you wealth and like happiness and stuff like that, So then you only have it for a certain amount of time. So assuming that you were doing good with it, like whatever you're chayav to do or whatever is rational to do, what should you do with the rest of it? So you have a choice. You either don't do anything with it and then you die and then it goes to someone else, or you enjoy it. Now, if you leaving it to someone else is part of your doing good, like an inheritance or a donation, great. But let's say like not everything's going to fall into that category. Like that dessert that's sitting there. Like if it is not going to be detrimental to you to eat it, and if it's going to bring you enjoyment, so then like why? And if you are the type of person who can afford to have dessert, like financially and health wise, why would you not have it? And there's a Yerushalmi. See, this is the bad thing, right? Because Rabbi Moskowitz has a bad memory, and anything that I heard from him, he never quoted the sources. So he'll say vaguely that he says this is in the Yerushalmi, and I've looked it up before. I just don't know offhand where it is. You did?
I think so. It's the one about the like you're 5 if you don't eat it. Like
Yeah.
You're 5. And then
Good. We're both holding and not knowing the Yerushalmi. Yeah. Is that anyone who something like who has the opportunity to take part of a pleasure and doesn't is like Asid Litian Sadin or something like that. Like he is going to be held liable for it. Now again, that doesn't mean that you just go do every pleasure. But it means that like if you have the opportunity to have a pleasure and there's no isser and there's no reason to not have it, and yet you withhold yourself from having the pleasure without any sort of like goal in mind, like not for your perfection, not for yourself. So then like you're not enjoying God's world, and that's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I heard it from Shir.
Oh, okay, that's probably where my mom was heard it from too. Yeah. Okay, so that takes care of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel. And it's a gift of God. Yeah?
That was the thing that I was actually saying.
Oh, it was. Okay, I just didn't hear that in your words.
Yeah.
You're saying you might as well do good. When you said do good, the fact that you're using the lashon of the pasuk that doesn't correspond to that,
Yeah,
that's what I thought you meant.
I was thinking, but that was what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah. Right, okay. So that takes care of Yud Gimel. All right, this is the part now that I think we also didn't get. Yadati, wait, where are we at? Yud Daled. Yadati, ki kol asher yaseh halakim mihu yehi elolam alav ein losif umimeno ein legrov halakim asa shiru milafanav. Right, this is hard. So I knew that everything that God will do, that will be forever. You can't add to it and you can't detract from it. And God did it so that people would fear him. So I think when I read this, I think I commented that I did not quite like the Mahari Kara's shot here. He says that Pisron Yadati ki kol ma shehakadosh baruch hu oseh shama shezeh amal acher ochel. Someone else is going to eat it or consume it. Hu yeh la'olam pisron kach roy lios la'olam. That's how it's going to be forever. You shouldn't add to it. Shema yomar lacha adam bidin hayashiyarech adam yamim ad sheyochel v'yishtek kol oshrov lo yochlu acherim es yigio. Maybe a person will say it is right that a person shouldn't live out his days long life until he eats and drinks all of his wealth, and so that others don't eat it. Based on that, it says you can't add to it. That maybe his life should be cut short. And then it says, God made it so that they fear before him. So the fact that your toil someone else enjoys, this people should be in fear before him. That they should take it to their heart, saying, if I don't distribute what I have to aniyim and acquire olam haba, tomorrow I'll die and others will consume it. But if people live for a long time, then they wouldn't take it to heart to do good. So the part of this that I like is the very end. That okay, fine. If you knew that you're going to live for a long time, then you wouldn't do good because you would just consume everything that you had. And the fact that you're going to die means that you have a limited amount of time and resources, and you have to decide what to do with it. And then you can implement what he just said before, of like enjoying it and like doing good with it. but there's something that bothers me. I don't get the olav in lahosif in mimina in legroa, and I'd like to see if there's a more organic way to fit in his shot of ha'elokim asam shiur umilfanav. So if we can take like his general approach that he's been taking, let's say we only read up until that pasuk, what would we say for pasuk Yudala that would fit into what he said before? That's kind of how I want to like ride the Mahari Kara wave. Yeah.
Why do you not like it?
I can't explain. I think the fact that he brought in Olam Haba, and maybe that's part of his shita from before, because I didn't actually go back and read his first two prakim of Koheles. But the fact that Koheles has not mentioned Olam Haba yet, I find it very odd that he brings it up. And I don't know if he's getting it from the setup that the remainder of the parak, he questions Olam Haba. So maybe that's where he's getting it from, but it feels artificial to me.
Well, maybe he's talking about the like we were talking before, like the objective of success.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that's the just
yeah. Maybe it's left off of Olam Haba, you know. Yeah. What else don't I like about it? That would address that part. What else don't I like though? I think. Yeah, I don't know what I don't like about it. It's a good question. I just don't know what I don't like. It doesn't sit well.
I don't know if this is similar, but I have like I don't know, confusion, objection, like
yeah.
Why? It seems like there's some sort of argument that like, oh, like because you earned things, you should live long enough to enjoy them. And I don't really get what that like claim is.
Yeah, I guess I took that, and I don't know if this is true. I took that as like the way people feel about it. That like you talk to the guy who like retires at 75 and he's made all this wealth, and like then he gets sick. Like he's gonna feel like it's unjust that he can't enjoy it because he worked so hard for it. And I can see that being relevant in a Yisron and Hevel framework, you know.
Right. Yeah,
and that also relates. That also relates to what he's going to say later on, like right after this, which is that we're going to see in pasuk 16. Odreis yitakas hashemesh, makom hamishpat shama haresha, makom hatzedek shama harasha. That like you see places that should have justice and they have wickedness, and vice versa. You know, like there's an injustice. I think the other thing I don't like is I don't like his pshat. Kol asher yasa Elokim hu yihi olam. To me, that sounds like a statement about the world that God made, not the fact that what God made, that people toil and others eat it, that phenomenon will be forever. I feel like that's like artificially plugged into the pasuk.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because we didn't just talk about that. I mean, look, you could say that he got. I mean, he puts that into the previous pasuk, into 13. You could say maybe he got that. He imported that from the end of chapter 2, because it did talk about that in the end of chapter 2. That like the guy who has the urge to amass is going to give it to someone else.
Right.
But yeah, it feels artificial to me. I have an intuition, not for the whole thing, but just for the Yira part. Okay, what would you say? Let me just ask this question. Okay, ignore the psukim. Given everything we've said from the beginning of chapter 3 through pasuk 13, okay, the phenomenon of the times and like you can't see what's going to happen in the future, and therefore you have to enjoy what we have now. Take that and then think of the statement: God did this. Oh, sorry, and the fact that you have the sense of timelessness. God did this so that people would fear him. How would you interpret that statement? God did this so that people would fear him in light of what we just said of all that other stuff.
I guess if it was actually true that this faith that you're in lasted forever,
yeah,
then you would never have any reason to, like, I guess, like, go out of, like, think of anything outside the state you're in right now.
Right here.
I'm in a pleasant state.
Uh-huh.
There's no reason.
So that works for the pleasantness, but not for the avelos. Right? You got half of the psukim.
Well, then you would you think that there's nothing you can do to fix this.
Uh-huh.
Like,
okay.
There's not going to be a motivator for change when you're for changing yourself. Not being motivated to do something when you're in a good state because you're going to be in a good state forever.
Mhm.
And not being motivated because and not being motivated when you're in a bad state.
Okay, so how, assuming that that's true and that that's true, how is that yira, or how does that lead to yira?
Oh, because then you, because the change we're talking about is changing toward like becoming more aware of God's world.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was explaining what Zeb was saying, but I don't agree.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I think the what Hashem did that it's talking about is the feeling of eternity, not the fact that it's not actually eternal.
Uh-huh.
The
Oh,
thing-
so that actually that's a good question. I wasn't thinking about it that. Yeah, and let me just read the psukim again.
it's the fact that the eternity is placed in the hearts of men,
Hmm.
not that things change.
Yeah, it's a good question what it's going on. Yadati ki kol asher asa yaseh ha'elokim hu yeh le'olam. That's not something that's going on literally everything. Everything that God made will be forever. Alav ein lozif u'min ligrov ha'elokim asa sheyiru milafanav. I guess that's another question, right? I mean, I was saying in this experiment, just ignore that part. But kol asher yaseh ha'elokim. See, I mean, it sounds like if you take the kol asher yaseh ha'elokim, sounds like it's referring to all of the aces again, also, because that also was referred to as hakol asa yafa be'ito, right? That's hakol, you know.
Yeah, could it be an idea of like you ultimately can't control the outcome?
So that's the direction I was thinking. Like, if you had this, I was thinking not like Isaac. I think your question's good though, so like, you be prepared to object to me. But like, if you were sure about that your perception of the present was indicative of the future, then there's a certain type of confidence that you could proceed with, you know. But the fact that like you don't know what the future holds, and that what looks good now could end up being bad, or what you think is good, like your perception, you can't question. That puts you into like a state of ha'na'ah, of like of submissiveness to the will of God about what's going to happen in the world, you know. And that's something, that feature of reality is permanent. Like, you're never going to get into a state where you can definitively say, oh, now I'm in a state where I can see the future. It's like a perpetual thing. It's like the quality of everything that he made.
I object.
Yes.
Well, I think actually the thing I object to is the classification of that as what Zeb said. Because it sounded like you were saying that it's the fact that the things don't last forever. Don't actually.
Yeah.
It sounded like you were saying that the fact that the feelings don't last. That.
Oh, I thought you were saying the fact that things change.
Oh, yeah, that more that.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that.
Myzev, no Myzev.
Well,
I'm both.
you're both the thing. You're both the. Why I object
Is it
to
time to be Isaac?
Well, I'm saying that I think it's not the fact that the things just change. It's the fact that you don't see that the things are going to change, and you're recognizing that you won't.
You're trying to work the Olam thing in there again,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I respect that, but I don't know if I agree with it, and I don't know if I could justify my disagreement with it. But like, just to clarify the parameters of what I'm saying and what you're saying, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I think there's three possibilities on the table.
Yeah.
That
I don't know if I'm saying exactly the same.
yeah. We might not be.
of what it was that Hashem did. I'm objecting to one of them.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So let me clarify what I'm saying. I think what Hashem did is referring to, I'm saying it includes the hakol. And by that is the phenomenon of a time for this and a time for that, and man not being able to tell. But now I'm thinking I'm saying that what you're saying. Because man can't tell because of the eternity that God placed in his heart.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. It's just you can't necessarily tell what the future holds, and then maybe
Oh, you're
because
right.
of that or something, or maybe
Oh,
just
yeah.
something altogether.
Okay, so let me express what you just said. It is two different things.
Yeah.
That you no human can tell what the future is going to be, but there is a propensity in humans to think that they can tell, and that's the olam that God put in their hearts.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is that the first thing, the fact that God made it so you can't tell, that puts you into a state of Yura before him. Not the fact that he created you with the feeling that you can tell. And the reason why is I don't think that leads to Yura. I don't think the fact that like you feel like things are going to last forever, or that you feel like your perception is indicative of reality, that leads to the opposite of Yura, really.
Right. It seems like getting over that is what leads.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna agree with you, and then you go back to the olam.
Yeah.
Which is that I think it's the fact that it's the recognition that you can't tell what's going to happen. That's going to cause the era.
Yeah.
And I think it's significantly amplified by the fact that you have the feeling and then are shown like time again that it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a certain additional element of helplessness of the fact that you are created with a phenomenon that deceives you, that allows you to deceive yourself again and again.
Yeah. I think it's the shattering of that that's like what really like moves the person. Or one of the things.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not the main thing. I think the main thing is the aces changing, and the fact that you can't tell what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think it's a significant thing.
Yeah.
This might be a weird connection. I don't know if it's true, but seems like
if you introduce it with Zay Pisrono, then I'll accept it.
Pisrono.
Yeah.
It seems like the feeling of immortality, or that this not immortality, that this state is gonna stay forever, I guess.
Yeah.
It seems like that comes from like the same place as like, how like, I don't know, like when you like look at the universe or like the laws of nature, you assume that like it's uniform, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it comes from, I don't know why I made that connection. Like it seems like a similar thing that like you assume that like the experience you're having right now, you like hyperactively do that, and then you say, oh, it's gonna be exactly like my experience.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing right now.
So let me give a counterpoint to that. Not to disagree, but just a counterpoint. So first I'll be beloved on it. Okay, which is like definitely there's a part of a person that seeks unity and stability in reality. So that I think is what you're looking for when you look at the laws of nature, and like that would be a reason to assume that. However, a little kid who's having a bad day at school says this school is terrible,
Right.
Like that to me doesn't seem like it stems from that. It stems from a much more like animalistic thing where like the pain that you're experiencing now is all you can think about and you can't see past it. And that's why like you view it as, and I don't know, like, look, I mean, maybe there's some complex like relationship between them that it stems from the same thing. Like, I don't know, like you could argue, for example, that like in the animal, this is total evolutionary biology speculation here.
I love that. That's my favorite area.
That it's in the animal's best interest to assume that the things it's experiencing are indicative of a permanent underlying reality. Because if it didn't assume that, then how can it learn or adapt to anything? The whole notion of adaptation would be out the window if there's no permanence. So in an animal, that's the case. And therefore, in a human who has a mind, then it's going to be amplified through the mind of assuming that the laws are the same, that what you're experiencing now. So you're going to universalize very quickly outwards.
Right.
Evolutionary speculation, pat on the back. Yeah. Yeah. So what are we saying now? Did we end up agreeing, or do we?
I'm only disagreeing with the first thing that I've said that he. I think
let's start afresh. I lost track of the tabs. Yeah, let's the browser closed and we can't restore tabs. So.
Oh no.
So what are we saying now is the pshat of Yadati ki kol asher yasa ha'elokim hu yehiyeh lo'olam alav ein lahosif umimenu ein ligrov ha'elokim asa shiur umilafanav.
The fact that simcha turns to sadness, or sadness turns to simcha. Like the changing of of this and the inability to predict it, to predict how to see from the beginning to the end, causes Yira, especially with the phenomenon of shattering the field.
Okay, and could we just define causes Yira in what sense? Because what I was saying, and tell me if this still holds, is it causes Yira because it is machnia you and makes you realize that you're kind of just at the whims of reality. Like you're subject to, you can't proceed like Bakoma Zakufa and like Psia Gasa, like, walking upright and straightforward, like with confidence, assuming that things are going to go your way. You're subject to the ever-changing things of the outside and the part of you that fakes you out into thinking that your perception is correct, but you could just be figuring yourself out, So there's a certain like Yira that you have to be aware of the fact that there is an objective reality greater than me that exists external to me, and that like my perception is not an indication of what's real. Like my perception is limited.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what's interesting here that I'm realizing, this is the first glimmer of the conclusion of Koheles. We haven't seen him talk about Yiras Hashem yet.
No.
Yiras Elokim.
Yeah.
And that is his ultimate conclusion. So it's interesting then to note what I want to do. Do you remember when we were reading through Koheles Bekius, and we noticed that like the theme of Sameach B'chalko, for example, came up and like had slightly different formulations at each of the step of the way. And like we said, well, when we go through this, let's try to chart what changes from time to time. So like here we've seen Sameach B'chalko in the end of 2, and now we're seeing a slightly different thing that includes Lasos Tov B'chayav. Now we're also seeing Yiras Elokim, and we'll see how that theme develops as we go. But the Yiras Elokim is coming from the ever-changing circumstances of life. That's where it's coming from. Very different place, for example, than the Yiras Hashem that Moshe Rabbeinu commands us in the Torah, or the Yiras Hashem that the Rambam talks about in Hilchos Yesodei Torah of like the awe of nature. Is a different kind of Yira.
It's like a Mishlei.
It's similar to Mishlei Yira, but it's different because this is not directly resulting in legislating or in determining how you make decisions. Mishlei was like Yira as opposed to acting with foolishness. Yira being synonymous with Musar Chachma. So I agree that this is like a foundation of that, but it's it is a different angle in my mind.
Closer to Yiras
This one?
The Rambam's categories.
In terms of the Rambam's categories, yeah.
It a little bit feels like if you got like the premium subscription of Mishlei, like you subscribe to Mishlei Gold.
Yeah. A funny analogy, yeah. Well, this is a convenient segue to my next topic, right? So we only have like 6 minutes, so maybe this is just a good place to start this. I'm going to share on the screen, and then since you can't see my screen, I realized this last minute. I got this up on my phone. Oh, hold on, I can't share the screen yet. I have to make sure it's on the right slide.
We can all just join the Zoom.
Nah. I don't like it. I find it extremely distracting when people are looking at their phones during Shir, even if I know that they're looking at the at the actual thing. So the question is, do you know what is on the screen? You guys don't know yet.
No.
And this will test your cultural literacy.
Oh God.
You get the fire.
Do you know what this is?
Oh,
The Triforce. Okay, this is the Triforce. Okay, so this is from the Legend of Zelda series, and so what I mean. So I meant to ask one of you, what happened to the whiteboard? I was gonna actually use the whiteboard today. Oh man. Okay. So you'll have to picture the Triforce. Okay, so I'll put this on the screen. But
I'm like this.
What was that?
Triangle with a different. This looks either Christian or Kabbalistic.
It's Nintendo. Yeah, this is the. I guess I skipped over the definition. People who are familiar with Triforce don't need a definition, but the official definition from the wiki is a sacred relic that appears throughout Nintendo's Legend of Zelda series. And the second definition is one of the three parts of the Triforce. Okay, so on the screen here, if you were to look, you would see in the middle in the black is Torah. Over here on the one side is Koheles. Over here is Mishlei, and on the top is Shir. Okay. And my understanding of there are a bunch of midrashim that basically say, and at one time I want to go through this either in our Mishlei Shir or in our Koheles Shir, that basically Shlomo HaMelech wrote his books because people were having a difficult time accessing Torah. Okay, so Torah is this yeah, okay, good. So you've had exposure. So Torah is a regimen that brings those who practice it properly to true success. Okay, so it is the regimen for chachma, for a life of chachma through mitzvos, midos, and deos. Okay, so that's the goal. That's what everything revolves around. Okay, but people weren't able to access that. People weren't able to get the benefit out of that. So Shlomo HaMelech wrote 3 books. Okay, Mishlei is chachma, is how to use chachma as a means to fulfill your desires. Mishlei doesn't question what your desires or your values are. It just says, okay, you want kavod, do it through chachma. You want money, do it through chachma. You want whatever, do it through chachma. And the opposite is foolishness. Koheles takes the opposite approach, which is chachma as the end to be desired. What is the happiness that you're striving for? What is your life about? Okay, and it really is not concerned with means and how you make decisions. Okay, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is, like I said at the beginning, we in Koheles last time did the we actually did in Torah, right? Now that's Torah in the sense that, I mean, it's Durabanan, but it's in Torah, it's in halacha. So that was halacha legislating through bracha saying this. Okay, but you can imagine a person who just had that halacha and didn't have any understanding of the underlying principles behind it would be like, that doesn't make any sense. I can't do that, right? So then Koheles comes along and shows how that fits into an entire worldview about how to view life, which is what we've done tonight and on Tuesday. Okay, Mishlei takes that and makes it into an operational decision-making technique, which is what we've been doing today and yesterday, which is Daga b'lev ish yashchena v'dav tov yisamchena. So if you look at it, all is the same idea. Torah is doing it through halachos and making it a regimen as part of your life that you, through the law, forces you to articulate a shevach in certain circumstances that reinforces this idea, and it's nationwide, right? Everyone does it, okay? Koheles is saying, look at your life, realize that you can't actually be happy about stuff right now because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You can't be sad about stuff because you don't know how it's going to turn out. And therefore you're kind of paralyzed in terms of being stuck in the present. And that idea is something that is a component part of understanding what human happiness is and how to seek it. Mishlei says, oh, you're stressed out. You want to get rid of stress? Think about this idea, And what's the top is Shir Shirim. Okay, Shir Shirim. And so Mishlei and Koheles are on the bottom because you need them before you can progress to the top. And I view Koheles and Mishlei as a pendulum. They're constantly swinging back and forth between Chachma in the ends and Chachma in the means, back and forth and back and forth. Shir Shirim is Avas Hashem, which is the ultimate destination of a life of Chachma, where you're no longer using Chachma as an end, but you are positively tapping into Chachma as the greatest pleasure. Which is Avas Hashem, and that's what Shir Shirim is a guide to or a description of, depending on how you learn it. So that's a loose description of how the 3 parts of the Shlomo HaMelech, Sifrei Shlomo, relate to Torah and its mission.
So the Shir is the Maskana of Koheles?
It is a development of the Maskana, because the actual Maskana of Koheles is mitzvos and yiras Elokim, but nowhere in Koheles does it mention Avas Hashem. But once you get there, then that moves you to Avas Hashem. And I haven't explained that yet. There's a way that the bridge is built. Yeah. But the difference is Mishlei and Koheles, you could kind of start on either one and you need both. Then Shir Shirim can only come afterwards. And that's why it says Shir Shirim is, all the Shirim are Kodesh, but Shir Shirim is Kodesh or Kodeshim. That's you have to have a certain level of Kedusha before you get there. All right, let's stop here for today. Yeah. We'll take a 5-minute break and then have our topics. I'll stay in the Zoom. I'm just going to stop the recording.